to the Eighth Doctor, who only has one story to tell visually, but thanks to Big Finish Audio, we have quite a few stories. Let's talk about Doctor number 8.
The fun thing about Paul McGann's Doctor is that, he has the TV movie in 96, which introduces him. He's got the Night of the Doctor mini episode from 2013, which is all of 7.5, 8 minutes long, where his era ends. But he's the Doctor who, funnily enough, has probably appeared in more stories than anybody else. And that's because in the time the show was off air, not only did you have the Big Finish audios that started up with him in 2001 and that are still ongoing to this day. I think he just had a box set come out in the last month or so. But also 70-plus novels that ran, from 97 through 2005, actually after the show came back. They finally wrapped up the range. And also not one, but two different comic runs as well. But judging McGann's Doctor is kind of difficult to do because we simply don't have very much of it on screen. And his debut, which is the Doctor Who TV movie, aka The Enemy Within, aka Grace 1999, whatever you want to call it, is kind of an interesting hybrid in its own right. It's a kind of odd. As much as I talk about survival as a template for what Russell T Davies will do, the TV movie in some ways is a template for New Who in a lot of respects. It's suddenly taken out of BBC TV studios and it's being shot in Vancouver with a bit of money. And they're actually shooting it more or less like it's a feature film, which is, of course, what New Who is doing now, especially in the last few years. The TV movie, though, is an odd hybrid because it's a co-production between two different arms of the BBC, Fox Television, and Universal Television. And it's 4 different sets of bosses all pulling it in different directions. And they were trying to make something that would not only appeal to a British audience who, after 6 or 7 years, would come, hopefully would come back to it and go, "Oh, Doctor Who, I used to watch this when I was younger," but also appeal to an American audience. And in that regard, it didn't succeed. And that's not necessarily the fault of the people making it. I mean, it was aired as part of the Tuesday night Fox movie slot because, the Fox network for a while in the early mid-90s was basically producing a series of made-for-TV movies on Tuesday nights, which would have been great had it not been airing against a little show you may have heard of called Roseanne, which was massively successful in its day. The Paul McGann TV movie had the misfortune of airing up against the episode of Roseanne where John Goodman, who played the lead character's husband, had a heart attack. It's one of the most watched episodes of that show throughout its entire run. And Mark Gatiss, in a couple of BBC radio interviews he's done over the years talking about the TV movie, says you can kind of imagine people flipping through channels in Wichita or somewhere and coming across the TV movie with all of its continuity references up front, because in the first 5 minutes you're hit with Skaro, Gallifrey, the Daleks, Regeneration, the Doctor, the Master, Paul McGann doing voiceover, but Sylvester McCoy playing the Doctor. And you can imagine somebody flipping channels and going, "What the blank is this?" And flipping over to, the Chicago Bulls basketball game that was on at the same time, or indeed Roseanne. So McGann didn't really get a fair shake at it, at least until Big Finish came along. And bless him for doing it, because it's really in the Big Finish audios where McGann's Doctor came into his own and really kind of exists. Because as much as I love the books, and I'm a writer, I'm a reader, I love books, the BBC Eighth Doctor novels never quite figured out what they were trying to do with him and with his Doctor. I think in part because they didn't have very much to go on. I mean, they had McGann's in 60 minutes out of a 90-minute running time, because basically Sylvester's there for the first half hour of the movie. They didn't have a whole lot to go on, and they struggle for a while, and then the books get very wrapped up in their own continuity for a while. And interestingly enough, given what New Who did, the books got so wrapped up in their own continuity that the only solution they could come up with to hit a reset button to start over was they blew up Gallifrey, which probably will sound very familiar. and they gave the Doctor amnesia, and they exiled him to Earth for 110 years or something, and then he gets his TARDIS back, but not his memories, and he picks up a couple of new companions and takes off again. But that's in the books, and the books are their own, I think, separate continuity from Big Finish. But Big Finish, I think it really has the sort of bragging rights, as it were, when it comes to McGann's Doctor. Not just because they got McGann back, but because they got to do so much with him. You know, there's been multiple eras of McGann on audio. There's the so-called main range audios where he's traveling with Charlie Pollard, played by the wonderful India Fisher, which are very much in the classic Who vein. They're, 4 or 6 episode stories. There's the Lucy Miller stories, which are very much sort of created around kind of the format of New Who. They're 45 minutes to an hour. They're told sort of single, it's either they're told on the single disc or it becomes a 2-disc story. But they're told in sort of 45-minute, hour-long episodes, pretty much like New Who. And, of course, we've now had Dark Eyes and Doom Coalition and Ravenous, I think it is now. And, of course, now the Time War sets as well, which brings us into New Who, which are their own things. The first Dark Eyes set I highly recommend for people who want to sample McGann on audio. It's a wonderful kind of mix of classic Who serial storytelling while with New Who production values. And McGann's Doctor's had an interesting evolution as well. I think in some ways he's the most human of the Doctors. He's the one who's the most excitable, the one who takes absolute joy in going to places and discovering things. Which makes the fact that he ends up having to become the War Doctor per New Who all the more tragic. But in terms of on-screen stuff, there's not a whole lot to judge his Doctor by, unfortunately. The TV movie's okay. I'm in two minds about the TV movie. There's times I sit down and I watch it and I absolutely love it and adore it and, think it's great. And there's other times I watch it and I go, McGann's great in it, but is the rest of it that good? So my feelings on the TV movie really depend on when you catch me, to be honest. But it's safe to say McGann never got a fair shake at the role on TV. So bless Big Finish, because they've given him plenty to run with.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.